Hello, Taurus, and welcome back to Soulfire Tarot. My name is Steve. This is for the month of May. Let's get to it. It's a little ding-a-ling, ding-a-ling-a-ling, ding. Psh. All right, so first off here, I'm going to draw from the Psychic Tarot deck, just for general kind of pillar themes. I'll do a left and right and probably a center later on. Then I'll go into the small mini rider deck here. I'll be intuitively drawing this time rather than doing random display. I will scan the energy and see which one is calling out for a bit more fine accuracy. Might be a little slower, but I think it's worth it. And then after that, I'll be gazing into the obsidian sphere to try to glean more psychic insights into the theme and the overall kind of energetics and the meaning of what comes through in the drawing. Alrighty, so with that, firstly, go to the Psychic Tarot for Taurus for the month of May 2025. We have on the left foundation and achievements. Look at that happy little cottage house with that happy little rainbow with a family. Foundation and achievements. 4 pentacles. Yeah, kind of grounded stability here. Taurus. Maybe a house, maybe some new residence. That's just literal. Let's keep it metaphorical for now. Yeah, something down here in the bottom. We also have fulfillment and wishes. Look at this guy sitting on a leaf with his treasure in between the waterfalls and the great golden glow of the luminous solar logos growth. Yeah, fulfillment and wishes, right? Prosperous spring, sprouting new opportunities, new creation afoot. Fun. All right, Taurus. Now I'm going to the deck here. Yeah, we have the two of Cups in reverse. And Justice. Yeah. So I feel like there's truth perhaps in partnership in the union of energy, truth and kind of reckoning and balance perhaps in a core partnership or relationship relating to emotional fulfillment, reciprocity, partnership and creativity, sharing of dreams, things like that. Not too far off from the Lovers, but a little different with the Cups in between foundation and achievements and fulfillment of wishes. Yeah, and we have Judgment in reverse, so there might be something up in the air that is yet to come to consequence, come to pass here. Yeah, there might be some kind of hesitation or lack of judgment, some kind of perhaps beneficence here. Yeah, we have the Hangman, a change of perspective, understanding the ego and the idea of self, understanding that sometimes if we just get a different view on things, this imagery of being hanged upside down, we can get a new view of where we're at and what's going on. It's also kind of a question of how did we get here to be hung upside down? Right? Sometimes life has a way of just throwing us into situations, circumstances, and experience to open our eyes and teach us something, to see something in a new way. But we also have that choice. It's the beauty of identity and creative sourcing. We also have the Four of Swords. This is somebody, taking rest in reverse. So I feel like there might be a sense of perhaps restlessness. Perhaps some of you, Taurus, have been busy towards your wishes and fulfillments and foundations and achievements therein. What is that about more, though, with the Four of Swords? The Five of Pentacles, finding shelter, finding refuge in the resources, finding refuge and resources in our community and shelter, perhaps charitableness. How are you giving your time? What are you taking in, Taurus? How is this keeping you from finding the rest you may be needing here? Interesting. All right, go more to the left underneath the foundation and achievement theme card. Yeah, moving on, things are changing. There's something moving here. Perhaps you've decided or have got to a point where you see that you need to keep moving on from what has been in the past, perhaps a different group arrangement, feelings, cards, things you've been associated with, things that you've been emotionally invested in. But life, the mystery and the dream of life seems perhaps in this time, this month, there may be influences leading you to somewhere new with your achievements and foundations. Right off the bottom, we have the Nine of Wands. Yeah, so you've achieved quite a lot, Taurus. You've put a lot of energy and time into something. And now you have it all here, gathered up. I mean, think about how much that is. Think about the responsibility you have of what you've created with your willpower, with your hard work, drive, energy, initiative, and directive. This is kind of like a fort, and here's this guy sitting out his fort like, what do I do with this now? Who's coming and going in that fort? Do I have to protect and manage that? And we also have the Emperor next to Justice. Yeah, so understanding your domain, your authority, your rulership and ownership of your space, your life, your structure, how you're ruling over things, perhaps with your foundation and achievements, understanding that there's justice at play, that there is a kind of, there's always a balance. Underneath the Emperor. Yeah, kind of deciding where you're going. We have the Magician in reverse. I feel like this is saying, to be careful of how you're applying your will and what you're manifesting. It might be saying that there's a kind of perhaps hesitation or question, with regards to the rulership here. Look into that real quick with my guide just to get some added perspective about the Magician in reverse. Yeah, being inspired about what you're doing here. Yeah, so the general themes with the Magician first are disconnected from your personal power and or manipulative, whereas the Emperor is about personal power, authority, and creativity, and how you're structuring things, finding stability. So yeah, reflect on that with the Magician. Pull this clarifier underneath the Emperor here, Yeah, I wonder if maybe there's a disagreement or people aren't seeing eye to eye, perhaps in some scenario relating to this. And there's a question of like, how do you assert your will, express that, or is it something where you're trying to kind of domineer and be in control of that structure and that stability? Or maybe you need to understand that you have the magician's wand, you are the magician, you speak and make it so, put words, thoughts, energy, feelings into action, and that will start manifesting, right? It's a really simple solution. It's just understanding how things get applied over time and what they amount to. Underneath the Nine of Wands, we have the Page of Cups. Yeah, so this is somebody who is kind of jolly and dreamy, somewhat romantic, but they're happy to share. They're happy to, spread, good cheer, and they're feeling, from their emotions here. And pulling this underneath the Nine of Wands, which is this kind of the fortress metaphor, right? Look at what you've achieved and what's built up here, like, are you open to share that? So I feel like for some of you, maybe if you're, working on foundations and achievements or something, that's a positive influence and a positive reminder here. Underneath the moving on of the Eight of Cups, we have the Ace of Swords in reversed. So there might have been some kind of truth, some kind of, questioning or a disagreement, that's influencing the moving on. Or perhaps there's something with relations to, serving your truth, your sense of the truth in your experience, your life here. That is in reversed. And I feel like this connects to the whatever's going on there with the moving on and the Ace of Swords reversed. We have the Nine of Cups. This is somebody who's smug and very abundant with the potential emotional energy here and what they've been able to cultivate with themselves, and they're kind of protective about it. They don't want to just give it away for nothing necessarily, right? But they're very resourced in their emotional resource. So I think for some of you, Taurus, your energy, your feelings, your emotional well-being is important. You've done a lot of work perhaps to kind of be protective and, putting yourself first and understanding how important that is to nurture yourself. And, you have to be careful with how that's going around and what's coming in the pot, what's coming in the cup, so to speak. Alrighty. Underneath the Magician, I want a bit more clarity here. Yeah, so we have the Seven of Swords. Yeah. So this almost looks like somebody thieving, and stealing something away from this camp with these swords, or is having to, hold these different ideas, these different thoughts, these decisions, and he's having to move them, from one place to another. So, yeah, I feel like this is just cautioning and understanding, like, words, thoughts, deeds, and actions of, it's kind of a question of, perhaps like manipulation. Maybe this person is, maybe you've been keeping score or keeping tabs on something here, and maybe there's some grievances or some grudges at play. I don't know why I'm saying that. It's just kind of what came through. All right. Yeah. So the Seven of Wands now. Yeah, this is somebody who's standing up and defending to what they believe in, what their values and principles and what they believe is right is underneath the Justice card and the Two of Cups. So yeah, I feel like there's some kind of reckoning here, perhaps some interpersonal conflict and or disagreement or issue. There needs to be, this is interesting for you, Taurus, to kind of like, stand your ground, understand why you are doing and why you are, the way you are, what's important for you about something this time for the month. Underneath the Judgment, we have the Four of Swords, or excuse me, the Four of Pentacles. Yeah, so, I feel like you're in a fairly resource spot, and you have these resources at your disposal, and it's kind of a question of like, what do you do with it, do you spend it lavishly? What do you invest it in? Is it something that maybe there's some doubt and resentment at play here, and you're just kind of like unsure how to go about, applying your money, your finances, or how you feel about something that is, you've gathered and now hold and maintain. Underneath the Hangman. Oh yeah, of course. The Ace of Cups. Yeah, so I feel like there's something to do with, I feel like you're looking for a new inspiration, Taurus. I feel like you need some kind of like resource here. You need some kind of emotional fulfillment and taking an opportunity, or perhaps there's something showing where, something that you thought you were very hopeful about, and it seemed like a great new opportunity to serve emotional fulfillment, just maybe hasn't come to pass. And I think maybe you've been getting perspective on that. And, perhaps some of you are feeling kind of like burnt out, or you haven't been getting the rest that you need. And so this card all of a sudden makes more sense of like, finding a place where you can, take refuge and find shelter and relief, and charitability, where, your needs will be met. And you won't have to be as burdened, towards, living your life and finding your fulfillment towards wishes. Couple things here. Yeah, I feel like things are kind of up in the air. Perhaps it's the time of kind of gestating and dreaming before you make a decision, of kind of weighing the options here, imagining what could be, imagining what's coming, what you could do with your resources. And the Knight of Swords also coming. I feel like the energy behind this right now is saying to like hold your horses, don't take it too quickly, in the sense of like weigh your decisions out, think things through, and what's important to you, what are your core values, what's sacred, what's at the center of things, and finding a balance here, and striking a sense of fairness and justice, reciprocity, to be able to serve those close relationships, or your relationship with yourself there, Taurus. All right, for the center, we'll draw another Psychic Tarot card. Yeah, we have heartache and loss. Interesting. Sorry, Taurus. I wonder what that could be about for some of you. So in here we see this woman who looks kind of solemn. It's very blue and kind of, morose. There's this kind of solemn solitude, having lost something, or the experience of loss and heartache, perhaps. So, Yeah, the King of Pentacles, I drew that as a clarifier. Yeah, perhaps matters of, money, wealth, and, Interesting. I feel like this will kind of spell out, for those of you who understand it, how it may be resonating. We'll see how things come through in time. All right, next for the obsidian sphere, to glean more psychic insights about the energetic themes and potential for the sign of Taurus in the month of May. Angels of clarity, insight, vision, knowledge, and truth, may I see and speak clearly insights to gleam through this magical orb for this time and these viewers. Yeah, there's a couple words coming to mind: trust, neglect, beneficence, lack of reciprocity, confusion, and weighing options, perhaps cutting away. Yeah, I feel like for some of you Taurus, maybe it's something that's already come to pass. Yeah, perhaps, like a job loss or something like that, or some kind of emotional, relational kind of disturbance or disagreement. Yeah, it's almost like there's something about like refining trust in yourself, seeing how you're kind of like at the center of things, of how you orient and make use with your resourcefulness, emotional, material, spiritual resources, and how this kind of impacts your foundations. Yeah, and there's it's like a quest. I feel like some of you, there's like a journey. Yeah, I'm seeing like Lord of the Rings. There's like uncertainty, but the journey is so worthwhile. There's friends, perhaps foes on our journey. Different challenges and obstacles. But there's so much joy and like achievement, experience, wisdom, and prosperity that can come from taking a arduous, potential risky journey. Yeah, and it's weird. Sometimes even with instability, it's like, how can you be stable amidst instability? What little things? Yeah, gratitude, appreciation, resourcefulness, self-reliance, creativity. Yeah, and again, I'm kind of seeing like trusting yourself, Taurus. All right, I'll draw from the Wild Mystic Oracle cards here for Taurus in May 2025. Collaboration, the ant. Yeah, collaborating, working together, coordinating. Yeah, Auntie-Ant. What if my aunt's name was Auntie? Auntie. All right, Taurus, we'll leave it at that. Well, I'd be really curious to hear how this resonates for you, Taurus. Before or after the month, perhaps. And if you'd like a personal reading directly, feel free to contact me through the email noted below. Please give a thumbs up or a thumbs down and subscribe for more. Peace. Thank you. Namaste. New Age stereotypes.